Hi guys! I wanted to do a side-by-side comparison of the two A6 Hobonichis, the original, which is the Japanese version, and the planner, which is the English version. I have used an original for about 3 years in various ways, but this is the first year that I've had an English planner, and so I thought that others might be interested to see the differences between them if you've only used one or the other and are thinking about maybe getting the other one for 2019. So as you can see, these are both A6s, they're both exactly the same size. This is what they look like from the side, they're pretty much the same thickness. And you can see straight away that the covers look very different from each other. The A6 is a kind of cream-colored cardstock, and it says Hobonichi Techo. This is the 2018 version, so there are a few differences for the 2019 version, which I'll point out as I go along. This is the 2019 version of the English planner, but the things that I'm going to be focusing on are true from year to year. So it says original here, and by contrast, this is a textured, more faux leathery feeling black cover. This one feels very, very smooth to the touch, and this one is really pebbled, so you can see up here that this is what it looks like. It's still a kind of cardstock, I think, as opposed to, say, the Moleskine or Leuchtturm soft covers. That's what it feels like to me anyway. But it just has a very different texture to this one, and obviously a very different look because of the different colors. And this is the Steiff edition, which has a little bear on the cover, but the standard one, the standard English planner, is the same except for this logo on the cover. So on the side, the English planner says Hobo embossed in gold and then 2019, whereas this one is plain, and it has this binding of what kind of looks like masking tape. I don't think it is, but that's what it reminds me of all along the side here. And then on the back, this one says Steiff because it's the collaborative version. I'm not sure what the standard English planner has here, if it has anything there or not. But the original is completely blank on the back. And they both have rounded corners for the paper, which is a really nice Hobonichi feature. And then when you open them, the differences continue. So the first difference you can see is the end paper color. The Hobonichi keeps with the original keeps with the cream color, whereas the English planner is gray. They're both a kind of thick cardstock. I feel like the English one is a bit thicker than this one, but you know, only marginally. And then you've got this different layout here. The original has the little Hobonichi logo, or this little symbol here, whereas the English one doesn't. And so the English one is called the planner, whereas the Japanese version is called the original. And I think that this difference in layout kind of highlights what seems to me like the main difference between these two is that the English one is much more pared down and streamlined and minimalist, which is interesting because I always think of Hobonichi as being quite minimalist anyway, but I was struck by how much more streamlined the English planner is when I actually saw it in person for the first time. And we'll see that as we go along. So we then move to the first spread, which is the year at a glance. And this is a little bit different again, both in layout and in content. So you can see that the Japanese version has the current year on the left, it's a full page spread, and then on the right it has two half-page years, the previous year and the following year. Whereas the English planner just has 2 years, the current year and the upcoming year, both on a page of their own. I actually kind of prefer this one because I very rarely, if ever, have to reference the previous year, but I have to reference the upcoming year quite a bit, so I think it's nice to have the upcoming year, you know, the following year, in on a page of its own, in a full page spread. So apart from those differences in content, the layout differences are also pretty clear. You can see again that the English version has much less writing. So at the top you've got some writing here, and obviously the Japanese version is quite bilingual. There's a lot of Japanese and English, but some things are in Japanese only. So you have the same layout. This is a Monday start. The the Japanese original is available in a Sunday start or a Monday start. I have the Monday start version, whereas I think that the English planner is only available in a Monday start, but I might be wrong about that. The cousin and the weeks are definitely only available in a Monday start. And I think it's only the original that has the two options. So the days of the week obviously are in Japanese in the original and in English here. This layout looks pretty much the same, except that in the English planner, the numbers are bigger. The whole spread looks a bit bigger. As always, you've got Sundays in red, so that looks pretty similar. And then again here for 2020, or for the upcoming year, you just have less writing, less detail, and it's obviously a lot bigger. Then we go over onto the next spread, which is the vertical yearly spread, and this is one that I really like because it has so many different uses. You can use it as a big overview, bird's eye sort of forward planning spread, or you can use it for tracking. And both versions have grid paper. The grid size is different in the Japanese version than in the English version. It's, I think, 3.7 millimeters in the Japanese version and 4 millimeters in the English one. So it's just a little bit bigger in the English one. And you can see here again the difference in layout, where the Japanese version has Saturdays shaded in gray and then Sundays in red, whereas in the English version there's no shading, you just have Sundays in red and that's it. You also have a little bit of a difference in the size of the boxes at the top. So in the Japanese version you have 4 lines of blank grid paper, whereas in the English version you have 2. And the layout looks quite different at the top. So in the Japanese version the month numbers are quite big compared to the English ones. That's pretty much it in terms of the differences. They both have 4 months per page. They start in December of the previous year, and then they continue on for the rest of the year. So you have like 4 pages for this spread because it gives you an extra couple of months at the end. So you get January, February, and March of the following year. So this is another difference between the two, is that the Japanese version is available in a January start, which is this one, and also in a spring start, which begins in April, whereas the English planner is available only in a January start. And I assume that's because an April start probably isn't as relevant internationally as it is in Japan, where it's the start of the school year and therefore is a nice time to start a planner. So then we continue on to the month on 2-page spreads, and they both start in December of the preceding year. So if you really want to start your planner early, you can, at least if you can write really small and use these monthly boxes, as I have done before. So again, same information, but quite a different layout. So like I mentioned, I always thought that the Hobonichi in the Japanese version was quite minimalist, but then compared to the English planner, it looks positively over-decorated, because you have, as in the yearly spread, Saturdays in grey and Sundays in pink, whereas in the English version there's no shading of any kind. You just have Sundays in red, the numbers and the day of the week is in red, and that's it. They both have this column on the left for notes, and they both list the name of the month, but as you can see here, in the Japanese version it's shaded here at the top, whereas in the English version it's not. It's just, you just have the writing. And obviously the Japanese version is bilingual here, whereas in the English version, or the international version, it's in English only. The squares themselves look pretty similar except for the grid size, but again, you have a difference in color as well. So you can see on the Japanese version that it's like a kind of dark gray or charcoal, whereas the English version is black. So that makes a little bit of a subtle difference. The days that don't belong to the current month are grayed out in both versions. And the size of the numbers is different too. So you can see the English ones are bigger and look a bit more elongated to me. So it just gives you a different feel. They both list the week numbers, which is a feature that I like. But again, in the English, it's kind of bolder because the ink is a different color, and it also looks a little bit bigger to me, probably because the grid size is that much bigger. And the other difference is that in the Japanese version, you have a lot of writing, which I think is the days of the month in the traditional Japanese calendar. I might be wrong about that, but it's, you know, like some kind of labels which you don't have in the English version, which is totally blank except for the moon phases. So again, it just gives us really crisp, clear layout, which never appealed to me when I looked at this planner before on YouTube videos or on the Hobonichi website. I always thought I liked the Japanese version better because it's more colorful. But when I decided to try this version, I found out that I actually really like it. It's just so streamlined and simple that there's something very calming and pleasing about it. So that's the monthly spread. Another difference is, sorry, this is James's planner, which he's actually using this year, so I've just borrowed it to film this video. And this is mine, which I'm going to be using next year as a journal. So another difference is that because they give you an extra 3 months for forward planning for the following year, in this case it's 2019, and in this case it's 2020, they label the year so that you don't get mixed up and think that this is January of the current year, because they're 2 January spreads. So that's a nice touch that Hobonichi does. But it looks different. So in the English planner, this says 2020 all across the spread in gray, whereas in the Japanese version, it says 2019 just on the side. Now this might be something that has changed in the Japanese planner because I don't have a 2019 version of that. Usually the A6 and the cousin are the same, but I don't have my 2019 cousin yet because I get the spring version. So I can't tell you. It could be that that's something that has changed and that these will actually look identical this year. So you then move into the daily spread. So both of these are daily planners only. And this is just, I just started coloring in this, but I'm going to be using it as a journal. So they don't have a weekly spread. You can buy a separate weekly booklet, which you could use for either of them as a supplement, but the actual planner is just monthlies and dailies. So let's have a look at the same day. Well, it's not, it's a different year, but it's the same day, so you can see what the spread looks like in both of them. So on the Japanese planner, you can see first of all that there is quite a bit of color, and that's because every month has a different color. So the grids and the quotes and everything that's printed for that month will have its own color. And there's this very nice subtle color range that changes throughout the year. So you can see on the side here that you can tell what month it is from the color. Whereas in the English planner, it's just black. So the whole thing is black, and this is something that initially put me off of this because I thought it just doesn't look as exciting as this one where every month you get a different color. But now, like I said, I actually quite like the very streamlined minimalist look of the English planner. I like them both, but they're quite different. So if you look at the daily spread, you can see straight away that in the English planner, this whole top looks completely different than in the Japanese planner. In the Japanese planner, you've got the month, you know, as a number, and then you have the day, and then you have an indication of the moon phase and the day of the year that it is. And then you've got, again, this is some more information in Japanese, which I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's something to do with the old, like the imperial calendar, the old calendar. And then you have a top 5 checklist, and the whole thing is gridded. So there's this, like the entire page is gridded except for this little box at the top here. Whereas in the English planner, the whole top is just blank. There are no grids here. And the day of the month, the date is much bigger, and then it's got the day of the week and the month and the week number. which is not in the Japanese version. And then it's got the moon phase in this little separated section here. But the whole thing looks, I feel like it looks much crisper and cleaner. There's just a lot less going on. And then instead of having this kind of cutout with the grid, you've got a square with the grid, or it's almost, it's not a perfect square, but it's almost a square. And again, the grid is bigger, so it kind of gives a different impression. Then we have a difference in the timeline. So the Japanese timeline has a dot for every hour, and then every third hour is a number, and it's a 24-hour timeline. Whereas the English planner is, again, much more streamlined. So it doesn't have a timeline at all. It just has a 12 and then a little fork and knife symbol for dinner, which I think is interesting because it's a complete departure. And one of the reasons that this appealed to me to use as a journal or an art journal is that it doesn't have the timeline, and so there's kind of less going on the page, because if you're not using it as a planner, you really don't need the timeline. So I kind of like that. Then they both have a line here that divides the timeline from the rest of the page, and so you've got that in the English one too, but you can just ignore it quite easily in both of them. So obviously the English one doesn't have the top 5 checklist, which again can be useful if you're not using it as a planner. And then they both have a quote. So the difference between these is obviously the language. So something that I never really appreciated in Hobonichi was the quotes, because I can't read Japanese, and so this was just like kind of, you know, dead space to me. So in the English one, it's actually really cool because these quotes are very entertaining, and I like them because they're really quirky, and it's like they kind of come from the Hobonichi universe, as opposed to the kind of quotes that you get in planners like the Happy Planner or Erin Condren, where there are all these, like, you know, really perky motivational quotes, like she believed she could, so she did, and, you know, you get it, girl, and that kind of thing. In the Japanese one, sorry, in the English planner and in the Japanese planner, there are quotes that usually come from somewhere in Hobonichi land. So, you know, like they're a quote from one of the artists that's collaborated on one of the covers for the Weeks, or for the Cousin of the A6, and they, you know, sometimes by Shigesato Itoi, the head of Hobonichi, or, you know, its design team. It's all like kind of very Hobonichi-ish, and it just sort of makes you feel like you're part of this happy Hobonichi universe, which I really like. And often they're just really like bizarre or strange or unexpected, and I really like that too. So I think if you can't read Japanese, the English planner is actually really a good option, because then it kind of unlocks the ability to enjoy the quotes. And in both of them, the quotes are on both sides. But I'm not sure. I kind of have the feeling that there are more quotes in the Japanese version, because it looks like this is a full quote and then that's the attribution, and then the same thing on this side, whereas in the English version you've got a quote on the left hand side and then the attribution is on the right hand side. So I could be wrong about that, or it might not be completely consistent, but that's how it looks to me. So another difference is that the Japanese version marks Japanese holidays in this kind of like grayed out shaded writing, so it doesn't interfere with the writing, but it gives some decoration to the page, and it's on this in the same color as what's used for the rest of that month. Whereas the English version doesn't have that, because obviously it's designed for international use. But what it does do is it puts all of the Sundays in red. So it's just 2 colors for this whole thing, black and then red for Sundays. So it gives a very different feeling. It has a very different aesthetic, which again is really grown on me. And the same thing for the quote. So if you have a Sunday, the whole entire thing will be in red, the quote and the moon phase and everything. So I really like that. And in the Japanese version, you also have a different intro to the new month than in the English version. So let's go to the beginning of April, where you have this situation going on. So this is something that's changed for the 2019 version. In the 2018 version, this had lines. In the 2019 version, it's blank, And instead of saying, remember this, you have a quote from Japanese poetry or literature. In the English version, you still have the lines. This is the 2019 version, and it has these dotted lines, which are quite big compared to the grids in the Hobonichi. They're, I would say, probably about the size of 2 grid lines. And it says coming up, April, and then it's got the space to write, and there's no quote. So that's kind of a major-ish difference. And then obviously you've got this difference for Saturday and Sunday, where I already showed you what the Sundays look like in the English planner. But in the Japanese planner, Saturday is colored in, and then Sunday is also colored in, whereas in the English version, Saturday isn't colored in. So that continues until the end of the planner. Then after the dailies end, in the Japanese version you have a few pages of dot gridded paper in a kind of gray print, whereas in the English version they have something which I wasn't expecting. It's red dot grid. So again, unless this is changed for 2019 and the Japanese planner also has dot grid, that's something of a difference. They have a similar number of pages though. And then there's a big difference in the end matter. So in the Japanese version you get all kinds of stuff like a timetable and graph paper, favorites list. Some of these things I think again have changed for 2019 because they usually do something a bit different every year, but you get the same kind of stuff. There's usually like a brief history of the world. There's quite a lot of stuff going on at the back of the planner, which again, if you don't speak Japanese, is some of it is of limited use, some of it you can still use, like a list of gifts that you can record gifts that you've given to and ages of people. If they were born in a certain year, you can see how old they are. The English version doesn't have very much of that. It has a list of important contacts, and then it has some different stuff, which is interesting because it can be useful in various countries in the world. So it has international size charts, it has a conversion table, it has a ruler in centimeters and inches, and then it has some information which is geared definitely towards an international audience, and I really enjoyed because it tells you some interesting cultural information about Japan. So this one is traditional Japanese household items, and it has these really nice illustrations. And then the Japanese zodiac, and then a world of traditional sweets. So it just gives you this little sampler of different sweets from various countries in the world. And then it has international country codes and national holidays for a selection of countries. And then this personal notes page in the back, which just has room for your personal information. So I think the fact that this one is international and is geared for an international audience, I think is really nice because it kind of gives you a feel that you're using a Japanese planner, and it gives you some information about Japanese culture, but it also gives you some fun information that is just kind of interesting and adds to the international feel of the planner. At the very end, there's also a difference in the little stamp with the unique number on it. So in the Japanese version, it's round. It kind of looks like it's been stamped, whereas in the English version, it's just written out. And I'm not sure why they did it like that. I like this one better, but this one is just, kind of just written out, and it says Hobonichi Techo 2019 like that. And then you get the end paper, which again is cream in the Japanese version and gray in the English version. And that's it. So obviously, because they are the same size, they both fit the same cover, so you can use them interchangeably in that respect, and you could, have both of them for the different aesthetic, for different purposes, like use this one as a planner and this one as a journal or something, and switch the covers back and forth between them. So I really like both of these. They have a very different feel to me, and I think it just gives you really double the options, I guess, if you like the A6 size and you like Hobonichi. I always felt like the English planner wasn't for me and I liked the Japanese one, but now I've really come to like the English one, and I think that I'm definitely going to keep using it because it has a different feel but also a very nice aesthetic of its own. So I hope that you found this useful if you're kind of trying to decide between the original and the English planner. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!